Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I call the November 20th meeting of the Human Rights Commission into order. Let's begin with introductions of commission members. And Aaron, if you would like to start, and then we do have a member, I believe, logging in online as well.
Thank you. I'm Aaron Escari, Commission member.
Carolyn B. Kraft, Commission member.
Nancy Boyle, commission member.
Sorry, Xavier Welty, Commission member.
And we may have Saku, our chair, logging in briefly, and he will introduce himself when he does log in. Due to not having current quorum with the members of the meeting, we will not be able to move forward with some of the agenda items, such as chair and vice chair positions, which if we do have a fifth member arrive, we will go back to that. Brenda, I should have clarified this with you before, but are we able to approve minutes and agenda with the number we have?
Nope, we will have to delay that until Saku can join us. So item 2, 3, and 4, we will wait for Saku to jump on.
Absolutely. And if everybody's in agreement, since we do have a speaker today, maybe getting them up to the podium and then the additional things on the agenda, we can move towards the end, so that way we have time for questions and answers with Chandler. Does that work? Thank you very much, Chandler, for being here. Chandler is that of the executive director with the FM Coalition to End Homelessness. And from what I read briefly in the paper earlier this week, may have an additional title or some updates for us. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, commissioners, for allowing me the opportunity to be here today. So I don't have any slides, but I just was asked to speak a little bit to the needs that we're seeing currently in our community as it relates to homelessness. As we know, as soon as the temperatures dip below about 40 degrees, people start to wonder what are some of our community's winter plans and just kind of the overall status of homelessness in our community. So as Nancy mentioned, I'm Chandler Esslinger. I'm the executive director of the Fargo-Moorhead Coalition to End Homelessness. Our mission is that we work in partnership to achieve permanent solutions to prevent and end homelessness. And in our sector, ending homelessness means something really specific. It means making homelessness rare, brief, and one time. The coalition supports over 70 different organizations that make up our homelessness response system and agencies that support people at their varying stages of homelessness, either preventing it, supporting healthcare and behavioral health needs, recovery, and a variety of other organizations.
Sorry, can you slow down a little bit? I
Sure.
did not hear the last 30 seconds. If you could maybe repeat that.
Well, I mean, essentially what I shared is much of the information that you can find on the coalition's website. I'll reiterate our mission statement and then I'll kind of get into some more details. So at the coalition, our mission is that we work in partnership to achieve permanent solutions to prevent and end homelessness. Making homelessness rare, brief, and one time is our mission. So the timing of today's opportunity is actually quite perfect. We just wrapped a press conference with our shelter partners about the increasing need we are seeing across the community as it relates to homelessness. Over the past several years, we've estimated that on any given night, about 1,055 individuals are experiencing homelessness. This includes folks of all ages. It includes people who are living in emergency shelter, people who are living unsheltered in our community, people who are living in transitional housing, so essentially not a permanent residence, people who are doubled up, and then also people who are living in a place that's not meant for human habitation. So that could mean maybe somebody is living in a trailer that doesn't have access to heat or water or electricity. And even though they might have a structure that's protecting them, we would consider that a place not meant for human habitation. So that's the number that we've been working with over the last couple of years. Based on some data that I was able to receive from our regional partners, we have projected from the coalition that the current number of people experiencing homelessness in our community has risen to about 1,200 individuals. So that's not a number that we have 100% kind of vetted, but it is kind of an early indicator to kind of speak to the increasing need we're seeing in our community. What that translates to is from 2023 to 2024, we saw about a 9% increase in homelessness overall, and similarly from 2024 to 2025, that projection represents about a 9% increase as well. So unfortunately, what that means, although we are seeing increasing rates of homelessness across our community, that doesn't always mean that there is an increase in services available. On any given night, we estimate without kind of any winter overflow operations, there are about 350 shelter beds available in our community, and we know that the demand for shelter far exceeds the availability of those shelter beds. Again, kind of based on some of the recent data that is still kind of under review, but has been tentatively shared, is that we can estimate about 100 people experiencing unsheltered homelessness in the Fargo-Moorhead area. We know that there are probably, that's probably an undercount, but it is kind of the best available estimate that we have right now.
And that's on every given night, or on any given night, 150, or?
100 people experiencing unsheltered homelessness.
Okay.
Okay. Similarly, we also know that across the metro area, there are about 600 students experiencing homelessness. The definition for youth under 18 experiencing homelessness is slightly different than the way we calculate it for adults. So that 600 number doesn't kind of directly map on to that 1,200 number I shared earlier. I know that's a little complicated, but I do want to be as specific about what the data says as possible. You may all have also seen earlier this week, there was an article in the newspaper about how one of our area shelters, the New Life Center, is looking to expand some of their winter overflow operations. The New Life Center is our largest single adult men's shelter in the region. And they have over 100 beds for all of their emergency shelter and some of their treatment programming that they provide. And earlier today, their executive director, Rob Swears, said that they have been at capacity year-round for several years. And just this past summer, they were turning away about 7 adult men per day because they were already full for shelter services. And so that really indicated to them and their team, in order to fulfill their mission at New Life Center, they felt called to increase their overflow shelter capacity. So they're currently fundraising for those efforts and will be adapting a space that is across the street from the current shelter to meet that demand. I think conservatively, they're estimating they'll be able to serve about 24 adult men in that space once it's available. And although that won't make up the entire need, they do have a specific population that they focus on, which is kind of in their scope of service, and that will absolutely help ease some of the strain on the shelter systems we're seeing and the increasing demand of people who are vulnerable in our community. In addition to that, we have, again, a number of different shelters who are attempting to expand their capacity in different ways to meet the growing need. But all of this is also happening in the landscape of potential cuts from the federal government to homeless programs. There was a recent notice of funding opportunity that came out from Housing and Urban Development about the Continuum of Care program. I recognize that's a ton of jargon that I just used. They mean very specific things. But essentially what that means is about 70% of the funding that the state of North Dakota and our region in West Central Minnesota receives is at risk of non-renewal. So up to 70% of the services funded through that grant program are at risk. And we also know that those impacts will go far beyond just that 70% cut. And this translates to shelter beds. It translates to affordable housing options that are subsidized by HUD. And so really impacting the overall system between shelter and permanent housing that makes up that continuum of services. So these are things that we're really worried about. Although we recognize that the combined power of funding from the federal government and the state levels is still not enough to meet the need when those cuts happen. It just really undermines our ability to even maintain the status quo. And so agencies are actively working to figure out how they can expand their capacity. We also know that one of the fastest growing populations of people experiencing homelessness are youth. We tend to call these folks transition age youth. They're between the ages of 18 and 26. Historically, the Stepping Stones Resource Center, which is a program of Fraser, has been able to extend their winter hours to serve about 20 to 25 young adults and their families overnight throughout the winter months. But again, due to some similar budget constraints that they're facing, they will not be able to provide that extended service without an increase in funding support to the tune of about $125,000. And that's some data and statistics I got from their CEO, Sandra Leland, earlier today. Again, this is a critical service. When we don't have those expanded hours to support young people and their families, that often means that...
Excuse me.
Yep.
I really don't know what you're saying. I mean, it's a bunch of jargon right now, and I think that a presentation with numbers and a layout that was understandable, or even a paper, would have gone a long way with this. Because, I mean, that's you can't write all that down as quick as how you're talking. And I'm focused on what's your mission with ending homeless. What got you into ending homeless, and what's your whole role in this whole process? There's a lot of people suffering out there, and it doesn't seem to be getting better. 9% increase year over year. I mean, that's a lot of people who could be suffering. Who knows if the people you're counting are people who haven't passed due to the cold weather, and these. The air and the frigidness and stuff like that. But, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Just to interject really quickly, if, obviously not today would we be able to get all these numbers, but as you guys tabulate them within the organization and everything, if and when in the next couple of weeks, if we could get some numbers that we could share, and I know you're sharing them today, but in print that we could share with other commissioners, awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know those change as well, just because of the current nature of things. So just wanted to throw that in there before a possible answer.
Yeah, absolutely. These are statistics that we're regularly sharing through our coalition newsletter. That is absolutely the best way to stay up to date with the work of the coalition. And yeah, unfortunately, I just did not have an opportunity to kind of present this comprehensive update. I know Nancy reached out just last week to have me come today and share, and it was really focused on the needs. And those needs that I am expressing today, again, is information that was just released to the public at a press conference that ended at 11 a.m. So again, you're kind of getting the first blush of many of those concerns that our shelters were able to name earlier today. The work of the coalition, to answer your question, Commissioner Welty, is that, again, we work in partnership with all of the different service providers across our community to prevent and end homelessness. Each organization in our community has a unique mission in how they're supporting people experiencing homelessness. And what we're focused on at the coalition is kind of the macro level work of how is the system functioning. And to your point, we are seeing an increase in homelessness year after year. And that is not because service providers are not doing incredible work every day to prevent homelessness as much as possible and to move people into permanent housing situations. We work in a chronically underfunded sector that has never been funded to meet the need. For example, some of the funding I mentioned earlier from Housing and Urban Development, out of all of the people who would technically qualify for HUD programming, HUD has historically only been funded to serve 1 in 4 of those individuals. In addition to that, state-level funding has increased marginally in North Dakota. However, with some of the COVID-era funding that has gone away, that is a net zero increase, if not a net negative in terms of overall funding for the system. So the work of the coalition is to help ensure that we're telling that story, first of all, and that we're supporting system innovations that allow us to do more prevention work to minimize the number of people entering homelessness and to help build the infrastructure needed to ensure pathways out of homelessness. So for example, one of the programs that the coalition runs is the Landlord Risk Mitigation Fund. People who have complex backgrounds that maybe make them a risky renter in the eyes of a landlord can apply for this funding, and we are able to guarantee assistance to landlords in the event that there would be damage or past due rent that was associated with that unit. So it helps break down some of those barriers that landlords see that prevent people from moving into permanent housing. So we did just give a presentation at Fargo City Commission on November 10th that went into greater detail about all of the specific initiatives that we're working on. I would invite you to take a look at that as well as some of the recent news coverage. That wasn't really the point of the presentation today to talk about that, but more specifically to talk about the needs that our system is facing. And so that's kind of where I was starting from.
Just a quick question as you move forward as well. When I hear Stepping Stones program is in need of some funding to have, some of those additional numbers, especially that they see in the winter in between 18 and 26. Also that of the notice of the lack of funding, most likely that's going to be coming from Housing and Urban Development. Although those are separate, because I know one is federal government, one is a local non-for-profit, what can we do as a community to bring light to that? Is there something with Housing and Urban Development where we need to rally people up to be calling like we would our Congress people, or would that not make a difference? And then with Stepping Stones, in the same vein, what can we do as commissioners, as a community beyond donating? Is it getting the word out there? What would you suggest?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Commissioner Boyle. So I would say one of the number one things is just, first of all, to be educated about the increasing need in our community. So I'm grateful again for the opportunity to be here and discuss that in brief today. When it comes to the cuts from Housing and Urban Development, absolutely, please consider reaching out to our state representatives, encouraging them, this is the exact language, is to encourage them to renew the previous year's COC awards. And there's really great sign-on letters from the National Alliance to End Homelessness, the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, and the National Homelessness Law Center that are all doing really big advocacy right now around this effort. Although we may kind of be past the point of no return, it is a good signal to our elected leaders to show support for renewed funding for these essential services. So that's definitely one step. I think the other thing is...
Before you move forward, just so I make sure I'm getting it all clear here, the various groups that you talked about that we should reach out to beyond the Congress people, state reps, would we be able to find those links, numbers through the coalition? Where should we look for that contact info?
Yeah, so again, the coalition puts many of those action alerts in our emails. So if you're not signed up for our coalition newsletter, we would encourage you to do so. And then if you just even were to type in National Alliance to End Homelessness in a search browser, you'll get those action alerts right away. So, and they have really great language. They make it really easy for folks to sign on to support that. I think we are in a season of giving for a variety of different ways. And we know that giving, whether that is your time or your expertise or financially to our partner organizations, is really critical. And so we just encourage folks to learn about the agencies in our community who are providing these essential services, figure out, who are you most values aligned? Is there a specific population that you want to make sure is being served? And then give them a call and see see how you can help. There's a variety of different ways that folks are looking for that support right now, and not all of it is monetary. So really being aware, encouraging support for those organizations, and speaking out on some of these kind of more federal level issues are all of critical importance. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation, and thanks for coming today. You know, in regards to what Commissioner Xavier was saying, our frustration remains with the rapid increase in the number of homelessness within the community. Why should the coalition is here working in collaboration with a lot of other groups? One would think that there will be progress being made, but then when we expect a lot of work being done outside and we tentatively do not see, according to the database, improvement, then there are concerns. It brings the question, can we go to some of the root causes of homelessness within the community? Are people being homeless because they do not have the ability to contribute towards society in terms of working? Or it is becoming more of a mental issue that needs to be addressed? What are some of the things that people are dealing with that are causing the increase? So are we just like, okay, we want to see people homeless. Yeah, we want to work with you people that are homeless. Are we identifying the root cause? Because maybe when we start to identify the root cause of these issues, then there are other channels in which there are other organizations that can come in and mitigate these things to have the numbers to be reduced. So what are we doing here? Because we come back every time, it's like rapid increase, where we are doing the work, but there's rapid increase. We are doing the work, but rapid increase. But we want to be progressive. So where are we going? And that's where the frustration is coming from.
Yeah, and I can echo that. I share in that frustration. My goal at the coalition is to make homelessness rare, brief, and one time. I want nothing more than to see those numbers decrease. And the fact of the matter is that it is not uniquely the ability of the coalition to achieve that outcome. It is all of us working together. You asked about root causes of homelessness, and we actually do know what the root causes of homelessness are. And it's mostly not because people are not working or because they're too mentally ill or anything like that. The main indicator for homelessness across the country is housing inaffordability. And that is for people who are working as well. There was a really great segment on Sunday morning this past weekend about people who are working 2, 3, 4 jobs, but they have poor credit that prevents them from having an apartment of their own. But what they can do is they can live in a hotel for a few days. And it's much more expensive to live day after day in a hotel, which they can afford, but they can never just get quite ahead to achieve a place of their own. So the level of economic instability that we're seeing across the country is a huge factor. The level of the lack of affordable housing is a huge factor. And then the lack of housing in general. In the Fargo-Moorhead, West Fargo area, we're facing over the next 10 years a scarcity of over 15,000 units of housing. So there's both a fundamental mismatch between the availability of housing that exists, the affordability of the housing that exists, and the economic stability of people in our community. And this is something that we're seeing reflected across the country. Part of why we're seeing what we're seeing here is in addition to our population growth and folks who are coming to Fargo-Moorhead for opportunity, for jobs, for all of the reasons why people want to live in Fargo. And sometimes what we know is that because of these economic factors, people fall on hard times and they kind of iteratively become homeless. So we do know what the root causes are, and this is the exact work of the coalition. We have convened a regional group to develop a comprehensive plan to prevent and end homelessness. And I share a much more comprehensive update about that in the Fargo City Commission meeting from November 10th. But that is exactly what we're working towards. We have not had a comprehensive community-wide plan since our 10-year plan to end homelessness expired in 2018. So we are overdue to have that structure guiding those systematic reductions over time.
Well, thanks for answering my question. And to the point, You were saying you guys have a comprehensive plan to address this issue. In that plan of comprehension, do you have a projection or like a time frame on when to address some of the issue? Do you have a projection in that plan, given the numbers in the database that they are seeing right now? Do you have a projection of what to expect in terms of achievable within the near future?
That is what we're developing right now.
Or it's being developed? Okay, thank you.
Chandler, thank you for the presentation. And sorry, I might have misheard you earlier, so I hope my tone didn't come across as being much. But I do have a question, and it's more personal, but have you ever experienced homelessness yourself?
No, I have never personally experienced homelessness.
Do you know do any of your colleagues, have they ever experienced homelessness?
Yes.
Okay. So the ideas that you kind of have are shaped around their perspective and your perspective, you know, on your day-to-day duties. How many homeless people would you say you interact with on average?
I would say that it varies from day to day because my work looks very different, but I regularly interact with people who are experiencing homelessness right now, as well as people who've recently exited homelessness. I also work very, very closely with the direct service
Do you
providers.
have a number, like on a week maybe? Like,
I don't know how to quantify that. I can say I regularly do.
you regularly do what?
Regularly interact with people experiencing homelessness. I'm not necessarily keeping like a tally
Yeah.
of the number of people that I'm interacting with, but I am regularly hearing direct input from people who've experienced homelessness, both on what they're experiencing now and on our plans for the future.
Okay. Yeah, no, I have a background in real estate as well, and housing, I should say. I come from a large family, and so housing has always been one of my big, you know, my get up and go type of deal. And, you know, it is a lot of the same story, a lot of groups that they want to bring in and, you know, institutions consistently building, but things are getting worse. And so, you know, I just hope that everybody involved and who continue to stay involved in these projects to benefit the people, because, you know, I don't know. I think we're moving into a time when things are going to get a lot tougher, and, you know, people are not talking about it, but it's coming, and it's coming fast. It's, you know, I think you're amazing. I can see that you have a lot of knowledge, and you can, I mean, you know the numbers, you know, that's a lot of partners to keep track of and a lot of people. And so, yeah, I mean, you're very, like, I can see that you know your game, you know real estate and all that, but there's a human side to this too. It's not just numbers. It's not just housing. It's like, you know, there's such a human element to this where we need housing in order to continue to function in this life and get up and go. I mean, it's not just housing. Sometimes you lose your housing and you lose all your possessions with it. And possessions are, you know, what people get up and go for every day. And so, you know, when we look at housing, we can't just keep reducing it down to numbers. I mean, the house is so big for someone, you know, it's not just, you know, I don't know how to explain that, but.
No, I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Welty, and I think that's something we're acutely aware of at the Coalition, is that this is a human issue. We have the great privilege in our community of knowing the names and the histories of many of the folks who are experiencing homelessness. And that is something that's unique. There are communities where that's not the case because they don't have the services and they don't have the relationships. And so, I can speak to some of the people I do know who have been homeless in our community on the streets, unsheltered for 5, 10 years plus. I know their names, I know their histories, I've spoken with them, they're my neighbors. I've lived in and around downtown Fargo the entire 14 years that I've lived here. Some of these folks are my friends. And so this is a deeply personal mission because I believe that we can care for our neighbors better. And part of the challenges that we're seeing are the result of systemic challenges that exist beyond just what's happening in Fargo-Moorhead. And so I think it's really important for us to be able to see, yes, both the immediate need and the urgency and the humanness that comes with, as well as these greater pressures and greater forces of systems that have not been designed to serve people and keep them off the street and help them to keep and maintain their housing. And so it is a combination of both the human and the system that is required to see progress moving forward. And I can guarantee you that is what I am committed to at the coalition, what my peers are committed to at the coalition. I think right now part of what we're seeing is there's a great distrust in nonprofits and a great distrust in government and their ability to execute on some of these things that we all need. And I understand why people have those concerns. But what I can personally guarantee is that we are working tirelessly to ensure that we are not going to continue to see an increase in homelessness again and again. But there are certain factors that are leading to what we're seeing right now that are far beyond just what the coalition can do. But that is why we exist. That's why we engage the diversity of partners that we do, and we ensure alignment towards those end goals. So that's really our work.
Would you say an increase in minimum wage would be a good first step, or, maybe, sorry, I don't know if that's a lot. But.
It's the economics of it all is a complicated issue, but I think to answer your question, there is no community in the nation where somebody on a minimum wage job can afford a one-bedroom apartment. So I think we can kind of draw some conclusions from there.
A couple of things I wanted to say, not only thanking you for being here today, because I know it was a last-minute ask last week, so appreciate that. Also echoing a lot of what you said of that piece of, this is your life work. You don't do it because of the big paycheck, per se. You're doing this because you genuinely care about those neighbors, individuals that you've gotten to know throughout your life. I know years ago, myself, I worked at Gladys Ray for a little bit in detox overnights. And you're so spot on, and you know this world 10 times better than I do. But the individuals coming in and how quickly we got to know them, and other people I was working alongside, they're, oh yeah, we know so-and-so. Their brother comes in or their sister comes in, and how quickly it turned into a family, which was beautiful to see, heartbreaking to know people were in need to that level, but also how quickly people rallied around each other, looked out for each other, took care of each other. And I think that human spirit is so often forgot about when we talk about populations and put another term. Yes, we need to use unhoused, of course, for people to understand, but also reminding people unhoused are our brothers, sisters, moms, dads, children, best friends. There's somebody's brother, sister. We need to look through those eyes, and also knowing too, if you had complete power to end the issue of homelessness and unhoused, you would do that with a snap of your fingers. It's many times red tape, multiple things, and like you shared too, just that piece of there's distrust sometimes in not-for-profits and government now. Well, two ends that usually if we can trust in one or the other, that can make a world of difference. But because of the nature and the climate of what we're living in right now, some people might not want to donate. Some people might not want to do these things, which is heartbreaking, because this is the time more than ever we need to all do something, whatever that is. If it's giving monetarily, if it's volunteering, educating one another, being able to know the truth so then we can take action to do something. So thank you for your tireless work. I can't imagine there's some nights and weeks that you're not on a minimal amount of sleep. At the same time, you wouldn't change that knowing that the work you're doing is making a difference. So thank you.
Thank you.
Nancy,
Hi, Nancy. Can I step in here?
Please do.
Hey, I'm Sakil. Thank you for this presentation. I think homelessness is becoming an issue in Fargo, and I think that's why you hear the commissioners have been very passionate about it. I apologize for anything that might have come up as, anything personal. I don't think that was the intention. I think what we need to do as a community is to have the conference on homelessness. We need a holistic approach to this issue and not just look at it from individual aspects of it. We need to come together as a community, have a conference on it, and develop a robust plan to address homelessness, especially if we can focus on the causation. Because right now, it's like every other program or every attempt to address homelessness, we're just trying to treat the symptom and not the cause. So we got to treat the cause. Fargo is becoming unaffordable by the day, and there are so many issues that contribute to homelessness. So I think it's a time the city leadership, all the stakeholders, we come together, sit at a round table and see how we can tackle this thing so that Fargo doesn't turn into the next LA. Thank you for your presentation. I think it was great.
Thank you. I believe, is this Mr. Chair of the Human? Okay. So I really appreciate your comments, and I would just also like to share that development of that comprehensive group of stakeholders to rally around this issue is exactly what we're executing on. I've been in this position for just about a year. It was the first thing I did was to start working towards building that comprehensive group of individuals to work on this issue. Unfortunately, I can't time travel and make it start sooner or any of those things, but the work is well underway. We have over 70 different organizations that are coming together to advise on this comprehensive plan to prevent and end homelessness. They represent businesses, they represent healthcare, they represent the justice system, they represent treatment, they represent behavioral health, they represent the entirety of the Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo, Dilworth, and Horace areas. We've been kind of imbued with support by the 5 metro mayors as well as both county commissions in order to do this work specifically. And so I recognize that the planning that's required in order to achieve these outcomes takes time, and while that time is passing, more people are entering into crisis and people are actively suffering. And we do have to take the due diligence to build that comprehensive plan and execute on it in order to see the type of measurable reductions we want. Otherwise, what we have is kind of the status quo today, where we continue to manage crisis instead of solving and addressing and preventing homelessness whenever possible and building those pathways to permanent housing. So this work is well underway. We will continue to provide updates to the community. We have great partners across all of these different sectors, across multiple jurisdictions, and there is a renewed sense of hope from every single person I talk to that we're on the right path. These are folks who have been around for 20, 30, 40 years, who have been working on this issue, who for the first time ever feel like we have what it takes to see these reductions over time. And that is not a responsibility that I take lightly. It is something I take very seriously. And to have that kind of support, I think, speaks volumes to where we're going. So I would just like to really hopefully share that momentum with you and chart that path forward. And again, happy to come back anytime and share additional updates as requested.
Thank you so much. Are there any additional questions or comments for Chandler?
No, we appreciate you coming, and I'm hopeful and very optimistic that things will continuously improve from your end. And the next time we hear, like you said, we will have some numbers of deductions in the process. We again applaud the job that you're doing. It's a continuous process for every one of us as a community, and wish you all the best. Thank you.
I'm struck by the fact that, and I can see how almost intractable this is. When you have a city with over 60% of the housing being rental, and whether or not you have regulation of rental or not is an issue. I think it's a really difficult problem. And getting a handle on it and maybe regulation around it if that can be done. But if you have a city with over 60% of the housing being rental, you're in a dire situation.
Yeah, we're a really unique community in that regard. That balance is usually flipped
Yeah.
in communities. They're usually predominantly homeowners and minority renters. In our area as well, of those renters, over 50% of them are cost burdened, meaning they're spending more than 30% of their
Right.
income on housing. And so Nancy mentioned this kind of at the beginning, but I also was recently appointed to Governor Armstrong's North Dakota Interagency Council on Homelessness, where I have high hopes that we will be addressing some of those state level policy issues that I think would target much of what you're saying.
You know, I live out in Golden Valley by Davies High School. And there are apartments everywhere. There's no bus service, none. The only bus, I think, that goes beyond 40th Avenue goes to Walmart a couple times a day. And I followed that bus to see where it went. It doesn't go back through neighborhoods. It gets out of there as fast as it can. Transportation is an issue for people. How do they get from point A to point B? There are a lot of issues, and especially in certain areas that are full of rental, which happens to be out where I live. And the services aren't there. Difficult situation.
Yeah, I really, again, appreciate those comments. You know, the social determinants of health are a huge factor in kind of increasing rates of homelessness, that connection to transportation. And we have declining vacancy rates. I know we see apartment buildings go up all over the Fargo-Moorhead area, but vacancies are actually declining. That's based on some information we recently got from the Federal Reserve Bank. So, you know, there's some specific indicators that are putting a lot of pressure and really pushing people into homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
And Saku, are you still online? I was going to see if we could move forward with approving minutes or agenda, but I don't hear him online, so we don't have quorum. With that being said, can we take public comment, Brenda?
Yes, so I don't have an administrative update, and I think, Christopher, you signed up for public comment? Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, Christopher Cohn, Fargo resident. Unfortunately, I did experience homelessness once in my life. It was 13 years ago, and I was unfairly evicted from a Fargo apartment. And I've been a renter my entire life in 3 or 4 states, and never was I evicted before. And I experienced it here. So the business climate in North Dakota, let's think about that. I have some concerns about Ms. Slinger's group, and I have communicated those to her through email, and she ultimately cut off communication, and it was a highly reasonable discussion. And a point of contention for me was why her group would not take any position on the city seeming to be pushing the relocation of the deck toward what I saw to be into the industrial zone. And I saw that right from the beginning. And she said they would take no position because they were more concerned about the overall issues of homelessness. And so then what happened? Exactly as I predicted. They allowed the downtown business community, our wealthy bankers and our boutique owners, to evict this demographic, the lowest power demographic, out of downtown and into the industrial zone, which is I don't have the word for it right now.
It's wrong. That's all you had to say.
And also, I want to point out they've got her group and the coalition and the larger coalition she's working in is talking about a claim to end homelessness. No, there will never be an ending homelessness. And why is that being put forward? That's never going to happen because this is being caused by economic conditions that are systemic to our society. And I want you to please note that they are focusing on reducing high visibility homelessness. Why would that be a priority? Why does it matter whether you are high visibility homeless or low visibility homeless? What is the substantive difference between those two things? Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. And Brenda, I don't believe we have anybody else signed up?
No, and Saku says he is still on, but I told him we could not hear him.
If the rest of the commissioners are in agreement with the time we're at, those additional things we were going to approve or on the agenda could all wait until next month or January. And we don't need to vote on that because we can't vote on that. Right? One thing that I was going to bring up, this fall, we've been having a focus each month in essence. We had several providers come in a couple months ago, talk about various pieces of housing, or what should we be aware of in the area. There was Lake Habitat for Humanity. We had somebody from High Plains Housing as well, a couple others. Last month, we had some individuals talking about immigration and rights. Our hope for January is to possibly have a couple people back. Also, Cody Schuler from the ACLU to talk about knowing our rights, overall human rights, and understanding not only for commissioners, but general community. What can we do? Who do we need to be calling to move things forward, take action, take a stand? So some of that will be taking place moving forward. Also wanted to mention that the Human Rights Commission is hoping, and one of our objectives moving forward is to partner with local entities, causes, non-for-profits that are doing the nitty-gritty of the work, for the lack of another term, the people that are in the trenches doing the work. We can always speak up here, we can share our opinions, our thoughts, we can advocate for things, but we also want the Human Rights Commission moving forward to be getting more involved in the community knowing that we're here and that we can help along the way too. So for those of you that are listening online, if individuals watch us in the future as well, and you need to reach us, don't hesitate in reaching out. Hopefully none of us are scary. That is not our goal by any means. But we want to partner with as many entities as possible, learning how we can fill a gap or support. So please don't hesitate moving forward in reaching out so we can make that objective happen and meet that goal. With that being said, unless there's anything from any other commissioner, I believe we can adjourn. I'm just going to look a couple more times to see if anybody's reaching for that mic. Okay, with that being said, if there's no additional business, we will adjourn our November 20th, 2025 Human Rights Commission meeting, and we will be back in January. And I think it's January 16th, 2026. Don't quote me on that date, but it is January 2026. I just don't know the date of the meeting. With that being said, we are adjourned.